today's format is a little different. You I think you participated in the first series of these workshops that I put together. What I've done is I've actually improved by some of the feedback. Um, and this is going to go set for 90 minutes. So I'll do the lecture piece. If we get done early, great. Then we'll go into um, so here's the agenda. So, I'll just do the quick overview, go through the references. Um, I don't know. If you just give me a thumbs up, did you see the Simon Sinek video for this particular presentation I gave? I guess last month. Oh, okay. Yeah, this isn't next flow. Okay. And then we'll do so then we'll get through creating a culture of success, human dynamic, humility and leadership, and then planning and project management overview, some key takeaways, 5 minute break, and then we'll get into discussion and then questions at the end. So the overall purpose of the workshops is to enhance the effectiveness across leadership, planning, and project management where you are. So as you could see, we're starting off today with the foundation. This is what I call the foundation for the whole workshop, and it's going to be primarily focused on leadership. And then we'll get into planning. We'll do a deep dive, and then project management, a deeper dive just to show some of the tools and templates, things of that nature for project management. So here we are today, the foundation session purpose to enhance the understanding of the role of leadership in planning and project management where you are. And I think that's very important to understand is when I say where you are, because everybody comes from a different industry, or maybe it's a different focus in your department or division. So it whatever is whatever fits for your culture, that's what we're aiming for, and that's what we're going after. Here's some references. I looked at the Project Management Institute. There are some references there with the PMBOK, the Project Management Book of Knowledge, or Body of Knowledge, and the Process Groups and Practice Guide, Emperor's Handbook, Marcus Aurelius. Really like this one because he has a lot of tidbits on leadership. Sun Tzu, and then Blink. Malcolm Gladwell talks about bias, and then a couple. Well, I have a few here. Some publications from the Marine Corps. So warfighting, Marine Corps planning process, and planning. Okay, so most leaders don't even know the game they're in is the name of this particular video. Um, it's it's a little bit longer than 7 minutes, but I only took out this particular clip because it's going to highlight what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, team. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and skip the video. But Simon Sinek, a lot of times, what he does is he highlights um, the leadership aspect, the human dynamic piece of the workplace, which is something that oftentimes what I see has been overlooked. So what I'm going to get into next is leadership. Like, what is leadership? Something that a lot of people try to define, and I don't even think that we could really put a singular uh, definition that is gonna be the number one thing that says, yep, this is absolutely it. But I did take this one because I think it is pretty forthright, and I think it is honest. Um, and this particular one is from General Clifton B. Gates. He was a 19th Commandant of the Marine Corps, and he said leadership is intangible, hard to measure, difficult to describe. Its quality would seem to stem from many factors, but certainly they must include a measure of inherent ability to control and direct, self-confidence based on expert knowledge, initiative, loyalty, pride, and sense of responsibility. And I think in my experience up until this point in life and working in um, in the civilian sector and then also in the military, um, I really feel like this second bullet here captures what I feel leadership is trying to do, and that's to effectively influence and inspire a group of people to thrive where they are in the pursuit of mission success. And I think this right here is focused on people, not necessarily the thing that we're trying to accomplish on a day-to-day basis. Um, a lot of times you hear like these little quotes that people throw out. And one of the things I like is one of the quotes that I like is when you care for your people, people tend to care for you. That's something that I've learned over the years of leading different groups of people. Um, is that when you take care of them, the actual mission takes care of itself. So in comes emotional intelligence, and this is something that Simon Sinek would have hit on, and you would have heard him talk about being empathetic, kind of turning the tables and saying, okay, well, if I put myself in that person's shoes, why are they feeling, or why are they, maybe projecting very negative things towards us as a group, or to me, if you're the leader. Um, so that emotional intelligence uh, to understand your people, right? To know your people, to understand their baseline. Hey, generally speaking, that person doesn't, isn't irritable. But today they are, or typically that person is very positive. Today they're very negative. Well, emotional intelligence allows you to pick that up and then to employ some of these things that we're going to talk about here on this quad chart. So, like self-awareness, self-management. So you could see the top portion of this quad chart talks about self. The bottom portion of this quad chart talks about, the way I'm looking at it, is the interaction with other humans. That social aspect of engaging other people, other humans. And so the top portion there, that first quad, how do you affect the team? How does a team affect you? Questions that you could ask yourself. And then over to the right hand quad, as you're looking at the screen, the self management piece. Think before you act. Build trust, and then social awareness. Be empathetic, and then employ active listening. Social skill. You're trying to establish that rapport with your people, trying to build effective teams, or you're maybe just an effective team, singular. Manage attitude. And it sounds cool. It's on this slide. This is right out of the project management body of knowledge. But how do we actually do this? And so we need to just do a deeper dive on what is leadership, right? Like in the workplace, or what is leadership maybe in the home front. But we're going to focus on what is leadership in running an organization where you are. So authority versus leadership. Well, we all know that there's going to be different positions that come with a certain level of authority, and that authority is in decision making. And then you have this thing called leadership. Well, authority is is bestowed on, again, folks that have been elevated to supervisory positions or whatever that may be within an organization. On the leadership side, what I like to say is you can lead wherever you are in the organization. So leadership is about helping influence positive outcomes within the workplace. Servant leadership, on the other hand, again, if you are in a leadership position, which I just said that if you are part of an organization, you are a leader in your own right. And it's just the way you want to influence others. So that servant leadership approach is, it's all about the team. It's all about others. It's not about you. And so that is not totally intuitive in, say, in the civilian workforce. A lot of times you're trying to make yourself look good so that way you can get that promotion. But again, the way I look at servant leadership, it should be something that is coming from the top down. And this is all about setting a climate for for that, setting an environment that is safe, that allows you to thrive as a team member. And then if you are a subordinate leader within that organization, that you feel safe to make decisions within the realm and the scope of your work. And that servant leadership piece, that umbrella that's over you, um, is what it is allowing you to thrive. And leadership is a skill. One of the things that Simon Sinek, you would have heard him say, is that leadership is one of those things where it's you can exercise it. It's like a muscle, and every day that you're interacting with other folks, you can practice some of the basic skills of being a good leader, and we're going to get into that. So when you're looking at it from, let's just say, a direct report perspective, and you're looking to your leadership, there's some things that you're expecting, right? And what I would say is, all my time in the Marine Corps, I spent just shy of 29 years in the Marine Corps, and made it a career. And here I am, working here at the University of Arizona. But one of the things that we looked at, and as I was a leader, in my own right within the organization, it was like, what is my responsibilities? What is expected of me? And those things were, I need to provide guidance to my people. I need to manage risk for the organization, and I have to make decisions. And those decisions need to be timely to allow our people to continue to move and progress in whatever we're trying to do. And you can kind of see these two pictures here, right? You got the boss on top, where he or she is sitting there and just saying go. And then on below that, you got the actual leader who's in front, pulling and sharing in whatever tasks are at hand, and saying, "Hey, let's go, team. Let's go, like, together." So it's that perspective. But when you're looking at providing guidance, I'm going to get into that, but it's pretty straightforward. That could be anything within the organization. It could be a project. It could be anything that you are working on, that you expect leadership to come down and at least provide some overarching guidance to give you some focus on what needs to be accomplished, and within the spirit of what that particular leader wants. Or they're able to articulate, hey, this is why we're doing this. And the why is always the purpose. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? And that's something that garners that motivation from your people, and it gets them moving because they're inspired by the why, the purpose. Why are we doing something? And I'm providing that guidance that gives you that. The manage the risk piece is everything within an organization, right? So from a leadership perspective, it could be something as simple as the budget, right? So you don't want to overspend the budget. Um, and so you're always putting in some of those things that can help mitigate risk, which could be, hey, we're going to have a team meeting every week, and these are the things that I need to be briefed on. And that person isn't trying to be nosy. That leader isn't trying to be nosy. What they're doing is they're managing risk. They're making sure that they're tracking. But when you're looking at it from the perspective of a direct report, it may be like, well, why do we have to have these meetings? So that could be the reason, right? They're trying to manage the risk of the organization. Making decisions is huge, and you're going to see as I talk through the rest of this presentation of, like, if you're a direct report, that your leader needs to make decisions. So they're basing those decisions based off of information that the team is maybe providing. So if you're coming to the table with good, solid, researched information, then you're helping out that leader make those decisions. And the idea is that they're not coming in and saying, today I'm gonna make a bad decision. No, no, no. They're coming in saying, I'm gonna make good decisions, based off on the information that my staff is providing, or my people are providing, or my team is providing. So it's that responsibility back to us as well as direct reports to our leaders to be able to make sure that we understand what the expectation is from them, but what is our expectations to provide something to them so that way they're properly informed and they're able to make sound decisions. And I have this green banner there at the bottom: vision, mission, and clarity. So from a leadership perspective, that vision, that mission of the organization provides focus for everyone to be able to row in the right direction. And then there's going to be those moments where maybe there's a change that comes down from um, upper executive leadership that says, hey, we got this change. Well, if there's that, there needs to be some clarity that needs to be brought forth to the team in the form of providing guidance, perhaps. So those are those expectations, providing that overarching vision, mission, and clarity for the team to thrive within the organization. So I'm going to talk about four types of friction. So all this stuff that we're talking about and what these leaders, what we're expecting these leaders to do, the entire organization is combating self-induced, external, physical, and mental friction. It's like something that is at bay at all times. Self-induced could be something as, say, for instance, you're putting together a project and that project is not well thought out, it's rushed, and you come out with a very cloudy plan that isn't well articulated. Then that's self-induced friction in and of itself, because now you have frustration within the team. Um, it may be unclear, a mission. Maybe you don't have the purpose of why we're doing something. Maybe you're in a meeting and it doesn't have an agenda and you're there, and then you're being put on the spot for something that you could have been prepared for if indeed there was an agenda um, that would have prompted you to come to that meeting prepared. Those are all types of and examples of self-induced friction, things that we could do to control to bring clarity to the team. External are all those things, external friction, are all those things that you cannot control. That could be the weather, that could be something that maybe executive leadership comes down with some kind of guidance. There's just things that are outside of your control. And what I say about those things is it's not about the actual external friction itself, the item that's being presented to the team. You can't do anything about that. But what you are in control of, you and the rest of the team is in control of, is how do you respond to that stimuli? So if it's cold outside, do we just start complaining, or do we just put a jacket on or a sweater so that way we can adapt? And I would say that same thing. If there's some kind of guidance that comes down, well, you're not gonna be able to put a jacket on, but you could adapt to whatever that guidance is and then make it a positive change within the organization. So external, those things happen a lot. And a lot of times teams get caught up in that negativity, and then you lose um, momentum. And so that's one of the things that you're trying to do to mitigate. Uh, Physical, those things is like if you're working late, is probably the number one thing I could say here is, if you're working long hours, things like that. Well, what can you do to mitigate that? And that's maybe bringing better organization, making sure that we're properly prepared, things of that nature. But physical, for the most part, at least being here at the university, I don't see anything quote unquote physically demanding. It's not like we're running or doing anything crazy like that, but I could see the long hours could potentially be there. And then mental um, friction is another real thing that people deal with on a daily basis. Um, But mental could be, again, mental strain, like putting together a workshop. That could be something that you may have to do. So, um, or when it comes to the mental types of friction, the way I look at it is anything that you have to do, if you have deadlines, those things do add mental friction to your plate. And so how do you mitigate that? And again, being organized within organizations really helps mitigate that mental friction. And then making sure that you're not telling your people, hey, today for tomorrow, you have to put together this brief for the director or for your PI or whoever it may be that you're interacting with. But that brings some mental strength to you. So as leaders, we need to be mindful of that. And I always talk about, mitigating friction to cultivate the human will. And what I mean by the human will is that every single day that you wake up, you're motivated to do something. Well, that something is getting up and doing the work that you've been um, tasked to accomplish. So anyway, just those are some of those things that I'd look at when you're trying to mitigate the friction. Is why are you trying to mitigate? And it's all about the human and the human will to be able to make sure that our people are ready to go every single day to the maximum of their ability to be able to produce the results that we're looking for within an organization. So challenges. So as I look at this picture over here, you have Denali reflecting off of Wonder Lake in Alaska. It looks beautiful from afar. And then, if I told you, well, hey, we're going to go ahead and try to ascend to the summit of this particular uh, beast uh, of a mountain, then there's going to be a lot of things that we need to do to prepare ourselves to meet that challenge. So I just look at that as leadership as well. When you look at positions that you may be applying for that are leadership positions, they may look just like this, beautiful from afar. But once you get in there, there's some challenges. And what I'm going to talk about is three challenges that are happening when you're in leadership positions, and you're going to be dealing with conflict management. You're going to be dealing with biases. You're going to be dealing with professional insecurity. So that conflict management piece is very, very near and dear probably to a lot of people, where um, you may just clash with other personalities within the workplace and all that good stuff, which is got it. It happens, but as leaders, we need to make sure that we're mindful of that and to be able to mitigate that. Biases, everyone has biases. So how do you mitigate your own biases? Malcolm Gladwell, the book Blink, he does talk about that. He does provide some exercises in that particular book for you to identify your own biases. And I think it's a great exercise for any leader to do, so that way they're mindful of the biases that they may have. And because they are providing guidance, they are managing risk, and they are making decisions. And biases can skew all three of those. So being clear or mindful of those biases can lead to better outcomes within your organization as you're providing that guidance, managing risk, and making decisions. Professional insecurity is something that I've seen time and time again, and I really feel that professional insecurity a lot of times is at the center of toxic work environments. So professional insecurity is being you want to be comfortable in your own skin. You want to be comfortable in your ability to accomplish what you've been tasked to do. If you're holding a position of authority slash you're in a leadership position, that professional insecurity, if you don't feel comfortable within those roles, it's going to rear its head. And a lot of times what happens is people will overcompensate and they will respond in a way that, well, all too often is very negative. And that's the creation of that toxic work environment. So recommended actions to mitigate these things is as having that emotional intelligence that we just spoke about, be engaged and be involved within your organization so you know what's to your left, to your right, in front of you, behind you, um, and you're not aloof to what is going on within your own organization. And that last bullet, lead people and manage things mentality. Just remember, people are human. You got to lead them. Everything else, manage things. That's like managing a timeline, managing deadlines, managing a work schedule. Those are all things that you're managing, but you have to lead people. And that needs to be the mindset that will help mitigate some of these challenges that I spoke about. So we're going to talk about the human dynamic. So here you have a doctor treating a patient. You the second picture here, you have Brigadier General um, uh, Eisenhower, and he's talking with two other brigadier generals, and this is post Pearl Harbor. They're already coming up with plans on how they're gonna create a coalition. Here you have the data science fellows program, and right here, yeah, we're all pictured, but it's about this interaction across all these humans to make this program a reality. Then over here, you have a picture of um, Marines with our coalition partners, so the Georgian Army, and then here in Afghanistan, working with a village elder. Well, the whole premise behind these pictures is to show that human interaction happens in all domains, and I could continue to show other pictures that just show humans interacting and making things happen on a daily basis. And so that that is going to call for a culture in which people can thrive to make things happen. And so here's an excerpt right out of Marine Corps doctrinal publication one, which is the foundational publication for the Marine Corps on a mindset on how they view warfighting. But this isn't about warfighting per se, but this is about leading. And I think this approach allows any organization to thrive. And you could see here that relations among all leaders should be based on honesty and frankness, regardless of disparity between positions of authority. Until a leader has reached and stated a decision, direct reports should consider it their duty to provide honest professional opinions, even though these may be in disagreement with the leader's opinions. Very powerful, and not all the time is something that is open and apparent in any organization. However, once a decision has been reached, direct reports then must support it as if it were their own. Leaders must encourage candor among direct reports and must not hide behind their position, title, or level of authority. Ready compliance for the purpose of personal advancement, the behavior of yes men will not be tolerated. So I just think this is very powerful. And I think there's definitely some stuff that you can pull out of this and to be able to apply where you are, wherever you are, to be able to apply some of these, in my opinion, very basic, fundamental approaches to leadership. So, how do we how do we make and how do we create these environments where people can thrive? So, I wrote an article, and it was published in the Marine Corps Gazette back in August of 2019. It was titled "Humility and Leadership," and I speak about three things, and I really feel that this is a very practical approach to be able to apply wherever you are. And that first one is to apply some humility to to be yourself, and that's where the authenticity comes into play. Be your authentic self, and have a positive mental attitude. And when it comes to humility, that humility is opposite of arrogance, and it is the number one thing that I feel breaks down barriers when you're engaging other people, and especially people of of a different mindset. Maybe they're, um, and you're able to at least engage, close the gap, break down barriers just by a very small dose of humility. It could go a long way. Authenticity. I put sincerity here because um, in the Emperor's Handbook, one of the things that is described and captured is that sincerity cannot be fabricated, can be faked. So it's either you're sincere or you're not. So you have to be yourself, and that way you become approachable within the workplace, where people are willing to come over and talk to you and maybe divulge some of their personal stuff because they're having a bad day, which will help with conflicts within the workplace, those kind of things. And then having a positive mental attitude. I think right now we could all select one thing to complain about today, but there's no reason to. But if we did, if you revert back to, um, just being negative, then what ends up happening is you have those toxic work environments. So having a positive mental attitude in the workplace is always good. Cultivate cooperation, collaboration, critical thinking. That is what we're trying to achieve. Um, the Marine Corps, we talk about one team, one fight. And I think that's a very, very honest way of looking at whatever we're trying to do as a team. There's not one person on the team that is not important, and we're not working in stovepipes. So the idea is that we're working as one team and in the accomplishment of a common goal, the one fight. So I'm going to break down something here where I'm going to be talking about leadership and direct reports and just kind of looking at the two perspectives and then breaking it down where, um, how does it all come together when you're working within an organization? So I've already talked about, provide guidance, manage risk, make decisions. That's what leaders do. So here's leadership, and we talk about leadership communicating, teaching, providing some performance feedback, expectations. So when a leader is communicating, they're trying to provide that guidance to the team. When they're teaching, because they need you to, uh, you know, be proficient at something to be able to achieve the day-to-day accomplishment of your duties. They're going to train you. They're going to mentor you. Then they're going to give you some performance feedback where you get that performance evaluation in the form of a performance evaluation. Then you got expectations, and leaders, all they just want us to implicitly execute the duties in which we've been tasked. And they don't want to have to go back and re-explain things. So from a direct report perspective, when they're communicating, you're just trying to understand. When you're being taught, you're just trying to learn and apply what you've learned. And when you get that performance feedback, you're just trying to understand your overall performance. What are the things I need to sustain or improve? And then the expectation from your perspective or from a direct reports perspective is perform the standard. That's it. And right here in this yellow box is this yellow shaded box where I see the execution of duties, where you may be getting taught and being mentored. You're trying to learn and apply, and then you're also getting some performance feedback. And sometimes it's almost simultaneous. So in some cases, but we've talked about the four types of friction, and they're always at bay. And I talk about humility, authenticity, and positive mental attitude. And those are those things that can help mitigate those four types of friction and close the gap between leaders and direct reports to make sure that we're consistently accomplishing the goal that we've been set out to do on a daily basis. And that requires being consistent, being persistent, having the energy and the patience to be able to get through uh, each day, week after week, month after month, etc. So I'm going to get into planning overview because planning is going to be the next. Um, it's going to be the next thing that we're going to be talking about moving forward here in the next couple weeks when we do the planning session as part of this workshop series. So planning are those processes required to establish the scope of the project, refine the objectives, and define the course of action required to attain the objectives that the project was undertaken to achieve. And that's right out of, again, the project management body of knowledge. I call it simply, we're doing planning because we're trying to understand before we do. And that's what, the name of this particular workshop is understanding before doing. So why is it important? So MCDP 1, or as you were, MCDP 5, talks about planning being a preparation process. And what I look at that is when we say preparation, it's an understanding of the things that we need to do to accomplish a certain mission. And Sun Tzu talks about planning is that by which harm is avoided and advantage gained. And I love that quote. I just love it because if you properly plan things, then you're going to be able to avoid certain bad decisions, or being able to look into the future to avoid, say, hey, you need to buy something in support of your project and we don't have the funding for it. Well, it's better not to plan for something if you know you're not going to have the funding, and then everybody's expecting something to be purchased in the future, but we know now that if we really look at it, we're not going to be able to afford that particular piece of equipment, whatever that may be. So let's not plan for that. So I just think, I just love this, and we could apply this to all kinds of certain things within the organization when you're looking at a particular plan, even to include an end date. Maybe that end date that you want to put down, and you haven't really looked at the plan and the details of the plan, and you say, well, I want this done by next week, but the reality is you're not going to be done for another month. So then that could be more harm done to your own staff because your expectations are just not valid. So planning is definitely, I believe in this particular quote. Poor planning is often cited as the cause of unsuccessful projects and or failed organizations. So, and that is we are littered in history with this particular, just an observation. This is not necessarily a quote, just one of my observations. So project management overview. I want to get into project management overview because there is a connection between project management and planning, and I'll be able to depict this in a picture so to better articulate it. So project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet the project requirements. Again, right out of the project management body of knowledge. So when you look at why is project management important, well, it's going to help the team organize itself and to properly monitor and control tasks and deliverables from executing phase to close phase. So as you can see, when project management is talked about, there's an initiation, then initiating process, which is essentially the idea, and then you're going to go into your planning processes, whatever that may be. Then you're going to execute the plan, and then while you're executing, you can see there the big blue circle is monitoring and controlling processes, and then closing process is when you close out the project. So where does planning come into play? So here it is. So you could see the planning process. Once you have the idea of what we want to do, and now we got to plan against it, well, here's a planning process that you could put your team through to be able to achieve a good solid plan before you start executing, i.e. start doing and applying project management methodologies. Some key takeaways: leadership is vital to creating a culture of success. Leadership can be learned. Leadership is responsible for mitigating the impacts of friction on the people they are entrusted to lead, and planning and project management are distinct and are not the same. So what we're going to do next is we're actually going to be going into discussion. So as you could see these things, we could actually tease out, all four of these bullets if you like, once we get to the discussion. What we're gonna do is we're at 150 right now, and we're just gonna take a quick 5 minute break, come back at 155, and then we'll get into discussion. So here's the discussion questions
Yeah.
that I have. So, one of the things I was gonna ask, like, provide a leadership example or leadership attribute you can implement immediately to enhance cooperation, collaboration, and communication across your team. And then Carlos, you can answer this too. Mm.
You know what would be helpful, I think, is almost, is it okay to get feedback here? It might be helpful if I have a link to the slides, because then I could look back at the slides, because there were some points I'm thinking of right now. So I do recall some specific things, but there's some other points I thought would be even better. But I was going to go back and look at the slide.
Okay, just let me know. I'm gonna pull it back up, and then I'm gonna
Do you
take
have
it
a
out.
link to a slides, or are they online anywhere?
Yeah, I can provide a link. I just sent it to you.
Okay, cool. I really think the culture is just so critical. I'm looking at your culture quote on how leaders must encourage candor
Hmm.
and honest feedback. I think, and that ties into having humility, having being able to accept honest feedback, authentically having people believe that they can comfortably give their opinions.
Exactly.
Creating that culture, having a positive mental attitude where even if someone says something that you might not agree with, you can be positive and acknowledge that they're honestly giving their feedback to try to help move the team forward. Just one team, one fight. I mean, the points just tie together so well. But if I had to create like one example, it's really working on that culture, and having people just being able to comfortably give their honest feedback. And that ties in to like groupthink. If you just have, yes men having groupthink and like thinking of the challenge or disaster. I mean,
Exactly. I
that's
was
an
gonna say.
extreme example, but, and it's kind of like, if you plan to have a good culture, I'm thinking of your other slide where, let me think here, you have all these different aspects tied together, and they lead up, and like you have if you have these different aspects built in there that lead to this culture, then it can help mitigate some of the other challenges. But fighting against groupthink and having people be able to give their honest feedback, I think it's very difficult to create a culture like that, but I think it's extremely important.
Yes, and I really feel like a lot of times when it comes to that type of culture, what I think leaders fail to do is to actually say it, to articulate it, not just assume that
Mm-hmm.
everybody understands. And that was something that I had to learn as a young officer, even as a young troop leader. It was back when, I was, as a young corporal and a sergeant, where if you don't say, if you just assume that your people understand something, but you haven't said it yourself, then they don't know. And
And
setting
there's
the
this power
culture,
difference. Is it, like you said
it's
in the
an,
culture slide, once a decision's made by a higher up, everyone's on board with that. Okay. But the people are aware of those power differences in the hierarchy, especially in a higher education setting. It's very hierarchical. It has some similarities to the military in that aspect. It really does.
yeah.
And there are big power differences, big power bubbles. And so
And,
I think
yeah.
assuming that, coming out and stating that and is very, I think it really is important because people are really uncomfortable. They're thinking about promotions. They're thinking about, self-interest, and they're really kind of nervous already because of the power differentials.
Yeah. And the thing is that that leader should be able to create that environment where people, and again, I call it thriving, where you are there and you are giving 100, you're 100% because you want to. That is powerful for any organization because then you have people running on all cylinders.
Yeah.
And 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 if there's something, if you hit like a snag, you're gonna rip right through that snag when you have those people that are behind that. And something that should be ripped through becomes this unsurmountable um, blockage that you just can't, or this obstacle you just can't move because the culture wasn't there to get through that. So, um, yeah, I agree. I agree that a lot of these things need to be properly articulated and communicated and acknowledged. All right. Why is it, why is leadership important to project success? Why would you think that as we're looking at planning and we're looking at projects, things like that, why do you think leadership would even be important?
I'm
Don
happy
Carlos,
to give my feedback. Yeah, but I want to give people a
why
chance.
is it leadership important to project success? Cannot be just drifting away if there's no leadership. It will never end. It will just die down.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's like without focus, without leadership being there to be able to say, hey, here's the beacon, right? Here's the beacon. Stay focused. Without having that, in my opinion, that's what that leadership is doing. I think, Don Carlos, I'm not gonna put words in your mouth, but I think that's what you're saying, right? It's like keeps the team focused, so that way, uh, people are not doing their own thing, and what they're contributing to the project is project success and for the end goal. Okay.
Yeah, and I think I'll add on that one. I think it's we can look at that Challenger video and we can say that's why leadership is important to project success. I think what's harder to do, and we can look at failed things and look retroactively and say the leadership wasn't there. I think what's harder to do is to be proactive and like to take what like that quote you really like about leadership is or looking at yeah, I just think we can look at failed examples of leadership. I think it's really hard on the front end to establish good leadership to prevent the project not being success to help enable the project to be successful. It's really hard to do on the front end. It's easy to look retroactively, but I think it's hard to set up on the front end.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it sets the tone too. I think leadership sets the tone for the rest of the team. Um, and I think that's important. And yeah.
And also you have to keep track and doing periodical assessments to see if the project is advancing or is it stagnated or it's just failing. So you have to be assessing in different times, not wait until the end that you don't have anything.
Yeah.
So you have to have the ability of doing a correction on the activities and see if you need to speed up something or something is starting to stagnate, and then focus on that. And then if that is critical for the rest of the project,
Hmm.
continue. You have to be monitoring
Exactly.
continuously.
Exactly.
And building on that, like leadership is critical, but leadership has to identify you're going to have to pull on project management. You're going to have to pull on planning to have that assessment and process that can feed back. But it all starts with that leadership identifying you're going to need those other tools.
Yes, and one of the techniques that I use, and, it wasn't something that I just developed, but it's something that I've been exposed to in my experience, primarily in the military. But I've done it in the civilian sector as well, where you have in progress reviews. So as you're going through the project, at least here with the strategic initiative, um, that particular one, we had to provide quarterly reports. Well, those quarterly reports were essentially progress reviews, in progress reviews. So you're not done with the project, but you're saying, here's a status update. And you're doing it through metrics, and then you're doing it through milestones that you would have already had mapped out prior to, and then being able to say, yeah, we met these particular milestones. Here's our metrics. We're um, within the thresholds, and or not. And then, like, to your point and to Carlos's point, it's about tracking that progress and then being able to make proper rudder steers if required to get us back on track. Um, so one of the things I want to talk about here is how can planning help you in developing effective project plans in the future, and what project management software or tools can you implement in current or future projects to help achieve project success? So I'm saying this because we didn't cover any of this. But what I would like to know is right now, before we get into planning and project management to the future, like, what has been your experience with being part of effective projects? Um, and do you think planning can help with that?
I mean, I think part of it ties into, first of all, planning for good leadership on the front end to ensure project success. So you can even turn it around and look at it that way. And then once you get into the actual project management, actual planning, um, there's definitely tools out there that can help with that. We could talk specifically about some of those, but
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's yeah, being able to methodically think through a problem, I think can help a team develop effective project plans. Um, and that's essentially what we're going to be talking about next workshop. And then for project management software, is there any software or tools that you use currently or you've seen being used that is pretty effective in your current, or maybe something that you're looking at for a future project? What about I don't know, schedules or a timeline? Like, those are tools that can be used.
You can get fancy dancy with like Trello boards and things like that.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I'm talking about. Yep, a
Yeah.
Trello board.
But even if you don't want to get to the technology aspect, just having that communication, that leadership, that communication culture established, that where you can talk with leadership and talk with your team members, just getting a whiteboard, getting together, getting a timeline. If you want to do it on a fancy
Yeah,
dancy Trello
whiteboard.
board, just sometimes I think the technology can get overwhelming. You have to learn how to use the technology tool, and it can be really helpful sometimes, and sometimes it's not worth the investment. But the principles, if we're going to do it with these new technological tools, or we're going to do it with pen and paper or whiteboards, having the process identified that you need to go through and that communication, I think those are really critical for project success.
Oh yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, but we'll be talking about, different project management software that can be used, and different tools, templates, things of that nature. And then every organization, I would think, has their own letterhead, the way they write memos, things like that. Same thing when it comes to project management. They're all going to have their way of how you communicate that particular plan. So over at Data Science Institute, we're implementing a very simple project plan template. It's where you capture project plan, but it's a way, not the way. It's a way, and it's the way we're doing it here at Data Science Institute to help us manage our various projects. But more importantly, how do we capture the information to document it, and then for a team to follow it, so that way it puts everybody on focus to accomplish that mission. So, all right, cool. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up here.